The letter fell from Dad's old ledger like a forgotten bookmark, his familiar scrawl making my heart skip. I hadn't planned to spend my 27th birthday digging through ancient paperwork in the hatchery office. But here I was, surrounded by the gentle hum of water pumps and the smell of fish feed. My name is Ellis, and until 5 minutes ago, I thought I knew everything about our family's trout farm. Turns out I didn't know half of it. "Hey, boss lady." Reid's voice carried from outside, followed by the crunch of gravel under his boots. "The camera crew's here. We should start setting up for the vlog." I quickly folded the letter and stuffed it into my jacket pocket. "Just a minute." My hands trembled as I tried to process what I'd just read. Dad's words echoed in my mind. "If you're reading this, Ellis, something's gone wrong. The farm isn't what it seems. Trust no one until you check the records from 2019. Reid appeared in the doorway, his perfectly styled hair catching the morning light. My husband of 8 months flashed his signature smile. The one that had won over thousands of followers and admittedly my heart. "Everything okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Yeah, just reminiscing." I gestured at the ledger. "Dad stuff." His expression softened. "I know today's rough, being the first birthday without him." He wrapped an arm around my shoulders. "But think how proud he'd be of our plans to modernize the place. Chase says our collaboration video could hit 1 million views." I forced a smile, though my stomach churned. Dad had always been wary of Reid's brother Chase and his get-rich-quick schemes. Now I wondered if he'd known something I didn't. "The crew's waiting," Reid continued. "Chase wants to film the big announcement today." "About the expansion?" I asked, watching his reaction carefully. "Among other things." He winked. "Got to keep some surprises for the viewers, right?" As Reid headed back outside, I pulled out my phone and texted Hank, our longtime farmhand. "Need you to check something. 2019 records. Urgent." The reply came instantly. "Meet me at the old storage shed. Lunch break." I glanced at Dad's photo on the wall, his kind eyes seeming to hold a warning I'd missed all these years. The letter in my pocket felt heavy, like a stone weighing down my heart. Whatever secrets lay in those 2019 records, I had a feeling they were about to change everything. Through the window, I watched Reid gesturing animatedly to his brother Chase, their heads close together in conversation. For the first time since our wedding, I wondered if I really knew the man I'd married at all. The old storage shed smelled like rust and secrets. Hank was already there when I arrived, his weathered face grim as he held up a stack of papers. The camera crew's distant chatter filtered through the walls, reminding me we didn't have much time. "Found something you need to see," Hank said, spreading the documents across a dusty workbench. "These invoices from 2019, they don't match our bank records." I leaned in, squinting at the numbers. "What do you mean?" "Your dad was writing checks to some company called Blue Ridge Holdings. Big ones." Hank tapped a figure that made my stomach drop. "But there's no record of what for." The shed door creaked, and I jumped. Mom stood in the doorway, looking more fragile than usual in her oversized sweater. "I wondered where you'd disappeared to," she said, her voice thin but knowing. "Reid's looking for you. Says it's time for the big announcement." "Just checking some old records," I said, trying to sound casual. Mom's eyes narrowed as she studied the papers. "Blue Ridge Holdings," she read aloud, and something flickered across her face. "I remember your father mentioning that name. Right before he got sick." Before I could press her for details, Reid's voice boomed from outside. "Ellis? Where are you, babe? Chase is getting antsy." "You better go," Hank muttered, gathering the papers. "But Ellis? Be careful what you sign today." I froze. "What do you mean?" "Just noticed Chase carrying around some mighty official-looking documents earlier. And he was making calls about property valuations." Mom grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "Listen to me, Ellis. Your father always said the farm's real value isn't in the land or the fish. It's in." The door burst open, and Reid appeared, slightly out of breath. "There you are. Everyone's waiting." His smile faltered when he saw the papers scattered on the workbench. "What's all this?" "Just reminiscing." I echoed his words from earlier, watching his reaction carefully. "About Dad?" "Well, save it for later. Chase has investors on video call. This is our big moment." He reached for my hand, but I noticed something I hadn't before, a slight tremor in his fingers, a tightness around his eyes. As I followed Reid out into the sunlight, Mom called after me. "Remember what matters, Ellis." I looked back, but she and Hank had already disappeared into the shadows of the shed, leaving me alone with the weight of unspoken warnings and that nagging feeling that I was walking into something I couldn't take back. The contract sat on my desk like a loaded gun. I'd found it buried in Reid's laptop bag while looking for a charger. 20 pages of legal jargon with Blue Ridge Holdings splashed across the top. The same company from Dad's mysterious checks. My hands shook as I read the terms. Complete buyout, immediate transfer of ownership, dissolution of current management. The door clicked open. Reid walked in, phone pressed to his ear. "Yeah, Chase, we're still on track for..." He stopped cold when he saw what I was holding. "Want to explain this?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Reid's face went through a series of micro-expressions, surprise, guilt, then that smooth charm I'd fallen for. "Honey, that's just a preliminary proposal. Nothing serious." "Nothing serious?" "It's dated 3 months ago, before Dad even died. The implications hit me like a physical blow. You were planning this while he was sick." "Ellis, listen." He reached for the contract, but I pulled it away. "The farm's struggling. Chase found investors who can modernize everything, make it profitable. By turning it into what? Another corporate fish farm?" The memory of Dad's note burned in my pocket. "Is that what Blue Ridge Holdings does?" Something flickered in Reid's eyes. "How do you know about Blue Ridge?" Before I could answer, Chase burst in, his usual polished presence slightly disheveled. "Reid, we need to..." "Oh." He assessed the situation with calculating eyes. "I see we're having that conversation early." "There's nothing to discuss," I said, standing up. "The farm's not for sale." Chase leaned against the doorframe, blocking my exit. "Ellis, be reasonable. Your father's methods were quaint but outdated. We're offering you a chance to be part of something bigger. My father built this place from nothing. And now he's gone," Chase said softly, his words landing like precise knife strikes. "Times change. People change. Right, Reid?" I looked at my husband, really looked at him. The man I'd married stood frozen between his brother and me, conflict written across his face. But he wouldn't meet my eyes. "The investors are waiting," Chase continued. "They need an answer today." "Then here's your answer." I ripped the contract in half, the sound sharp as a gunshot in the quiet office. "Get out." "Ellis," Reid started. "Both of you. Out." After they left, I sank into Dad's old chair, my heart pounding. Through the window, I watched Reid and Chase in another heated discussion by their car. Chase jabbed a finger toward the office, his face dark with anger. Reid just stood there, shoulders slumped, before finally nodding. I pulled out my phone and dialed Hank. "Remember those 2019 records? I need everything you can find on Blue Ridge Holdings. Tonight." Something told me I was running out of time to uncover the truth. The USB drive Hank handed me at midnight contained enough dirt to bury both Calloway brothers. My hands trembled as I scrolled through emails, contracts, and bank statements on my laptop. Each document was another nail in the coffin of my marriage. "Blue Ridge Holdings is just a shell company," Hank explained, pacing my kitchen. "Chase has 3 failed businesses under that name. Each time, he bought struggling family farms, stripped them for assets, then disappeared." A text from Reid lit up my phone. "Coming home soon? We need to talk." I ignored it. "What about the checks Dad wrote them?" Hank's expression darkened. "That's where it gets ugly. Your father found out what they were planning. The payments were..." Mom's coughing from upstairs interrupted us. I found her in the hallway, clutching the wall for support. "You shouldn't be up," I said, helping her to the bedroom. I heard voices. She gripped my arm with surprising strength. "Ellis, there's something you need to know about your father's last days." Before she could continue, headlights swept across the windows. Reid's car pulled into the driveway. "Go," Mom whispered. "But remember, the safe in the barn. The one behind your father's old fishing photos. The combination is..." The front door opened. "Ellis," Reid called out. "Tomorrow," I promised Mom, squeezing her hand. I headed downstairs to find Reid and Chase in my kitchen. Hank stood with his arms crossed, blocking access to my laptop. "Working late?" Chase asked, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Just catching up on farm business," I replied. "You know, the business you're trying to steal." "That's a serious accusation," Chase said softly. "Especially considering what we found in the 2019 records." Reid stepped forward, looking pained. "Ellis, the farm was already in trouble before Dad died. The environmental violations, the fines." "What violations?" Chase pulled out his phone, showing me official-looking documents. "Your father's signature is on all of them. We were trying to protect you from this, but..." He shrugged. "If this goes public, you'll lose everything anyway." I stared at Reid, the pieces clicking into place. "You knew about this when you married me?" The silence was answer enough. "Get out," Hank growled. "Both of you." After they left, I slumped against the counter, my world spinning. But through the kitchen window, I caught a glimpse of the old barn, dark against the stars. Whatever was in that safe, whatever Mom had tried to tell me, that was my next move. I just hoped I'd get to it before the Calloway brothers did. The combination Mom gave me worked on the first try. Inside Dad's old safe, beneath decades of dust, lay a single manila envelope and a worn leather journal. My flashlight beam caught movement outside the barn, headlights approaching down the long driveway. I stuffed everything into my jacket, just as Reid's voice carried through the night. "Ellis, your mom said you'd be out here." The journal's weight pressed against my ribs as I stepped out of the barn. Reid stood alone in the moonlight, looking smaller somehow, more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him. "Chase is gone," he said. "Back to the city." I told him I'm out. Out of what, exactly? I kept my distance, conscious of the secrets pressed against my chest. The scheme to steal my father's farm, or just this particular version of it? You don't understand. Those environmental violations Chase showed you? They're real, but not the way you think. He took a step forward. Your father was trying to protect something. Something big enough that people would kill for it. A page from Dad's journal crinkled against my skin. I thought of the mysterious payments, the shell company, all the pieces that didn't quite fit. Why should I believe anything you say? Because I found out what Chase was really after. Reid's voice cracked. It's not about the farm. It's about what's underneath it. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed, a text from Hank. "Don't trust him. Found proof. Chase never left. He's..." Headlights suddenly flooded the barnyard. Chase's SUV roared around the corner, kicking up gravel. "I'm sorry," Reid whispered. He gave me no choice. Chase emerged from the vehicle, holding something that made my blood freeze. Dad's original deed to the property, with a signature I knew couldn't be real. "Found this in your mother's room," Chase said, smirking. Amazing what people tell you when they're confused about their medication. The implications hit me like a physical blow. "What did you do to my mother?" "She's fine. Sleeping. But we need to talk about what your father really left you." Chase's eyes gleamed. "And about the mineral rights he sold to Blue Ridge Holdings 3 years ago." I felt the journal's spine pressing into my side, suddenly understanding why Dad had hidden it away. Whatever truth lay in those pages, Chase would do anything to keep it buried. "So," Chase continued, "are we going to do this the easy way, or should I show the environmental board what else I found in that safe?" Reid wouldn't meet my eyes. In the distance, a security light flickered on at the hatchery, where I knew Hank was watching, waiting. I had seconds to decide who to trust, and what secrets were worth protecting. Dad's journal lay open on my kitchen table, its revelations like a knife to my gut. The underground spring feeding our hatchery wasn't just water. It was one of the largest untapped mineral water sources in the state. Dad had discovered it years ago but kept it secret, knowing it would destroy the ecosystem he'd built. "Your father was a fool," Chase said, pacing behind me. "Sitting on a fortune, pretending it didn't exist." Mom's empty pill bottle rolled across the table as Reid set down a glass of water. "You should drink something," he said quietly. "Like you care." I pushed the glass away. "How long have you known about the spring?" "Since before the wedding." Reid's voice cracked. "Chase found the geological surveys. But Ellis, I swear I didn't know about your mother's medication." "Shut up, Reid," Chase snapped. He dropped a new contract in front of me. "Sign it, or the Environmental Board gets an anonymous tip about illegal waste dumping in protected waterways. Your choice." Through the window, I could see Hank's truck still parked by the hatchery, its headlights dark. He was waiting for my signal, but what could he do against forged documents and tampered evidence? "You really want to know what Dad wrote about you?" I turned to the last page of the journal. "He knew you were coming. Not you specifically, but people like you. That's why he set up the trust fund." Chase's smirk faltered. "What trust fund?" "The one that activates if anyone tries to force a sale." The words tumbled out, a desperate bluff based on fragments I'd pieced together. "Why do you think he was paying Blue Ridge Holdings?" "He was buying back the mineral rights you thought you found." Reid stepped forward. "Chase, maybe we should." "No." Chase grabbed the journal. "You're lying. Samuel Carter was broke when he died. We checked every account." I forced a laugh, channeling every ounce of Dad's confidence. "You checked the wrong names. Mom wasn't just his wife, she was his business partner. And her maiden name isn't Carter." The sound of gravel crunching outside made us all freeze. Headlights swept across the kitchen windows as multiple vehicles pulled up. "That'll be the real owners of Blue Ridge Holdings," I said, praying I was right about the names in Dad's ledger. "Mom's family. The ones who actually own those mineral rights you've been chasing." Chase's face went pale. Reid looked between us, finally understanding the weight of what he'd helped set in motion. But I wasn't prepared for what happened next, the sound of my mother's voice strong and clear, coming from the doorway. "Hello, Chase. I believe we need to discuss what you've been doing with my medication and my daughter's inheritance." The lawyers left at dawn, taking Chase and his forged documents with them. I stood at the hatchery's edge, watching the sunrise paint the water gold, when Reid's footsteps crunched behind me. "Your mother's quite something," he said, keeping his distance, pretending to be confused while gathering evidence against Chase. "She's a teacher. She notices everything." I didn't turn around. "Like how you kept trying to warn me in your own weak way. I wanted to tell you everything." His voice cracked. "But Chase, he had dirt on me too. From before I met you. The failed businesses, the debts." "Stop." I finally faced him. "I don't want excuses. I want to know if any of it was real." Reid stepped forward, then stopped himself. Through the morning mist, I could see Hank by the main building, pretending to check the feed tanks while keeping watch. "The first time I saw you," Reid said, "you were knee-deep in that stream, fixing a pump in the rain. I told Chase I'd found an easy mark, but the truth is, I'd never seen anyone so alive, so certain of their place in the world. And now I know what it costs to be that certain." He pulled out his phone, showing me his social media accounts. "All deleted. I'm done with the influencer life. The constant pressure to be something I'm not." Pretty words. I crossed my arms. But Dad's journal had pretty words too. About trust. About second chances. "Ellis. He wrote about Mom's father," I continued. "How he nearly lost everything chasing quick money, but found redemption working this land. That's why Dad protected the spring. Some things matter more than profit." The morning light caught Reid's face, showing every line of exhaustion and regret. "What are you saying?" I pulled out a contract, not Chase's, but one I'd drawn up last night with Mom's lawyers. 3 years. Working the farm, learning every aspect, no shortcuts. After that, if you still want to be part of this family's legacy, we can talk about shared ownership. And if I say no, then there's the door. But you should know." I gestured to the hills surrounding us. "That spring feeds more than just our farm. Dad set up a conservation trust before he died. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't sell it. Neither could Mom. The land protects itself." Reid stared at the contract for a long moment. Behind him, I saw Mom watching from the house window, Hank moving closer, both ready to support whatever choice I made. Finally, Reid picked up a pen. 3 years. 3 years, I confirmed, starting with cleaning out the holding tanks. He signed without hesitation, and I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the start of something stronger. Something Dad would have understood. 1 year later, I found the last letter. It was tucked inside Dad's old waders, which I'd finally gathered the courage to clear out. The paper was crisp, unlike the worn journal pages, telling me he'd written it just before the end. The hatchery hummed with morning activity outside my office. Through the window, I watched Reid leading a school group through the breeding tanks, his expertise genuine now after months of hands-on work. No cameras, no performative charm, just honest enthusiasm about sustainable farming. "Your father would be proud," Mom said from the doorway, her health restored after months of proper medication. "Of both of you." I held up the letter. "Did you know about this?" She smiled, that knowing teacher's smile. "Samuel always said the real test wasn't about protecting the spring or the farm. It was about protecting the ability to choose a better path." The letter trembled in my hands as I read Dad's final words. "Ellis, by now you've faced the choice I once faced, between profit and purpose. Between revenge and redemption. The trust fund isn't in any bank. It's in the people who choose to stay, to work, to build something lasting. Even those who start with the wrong intentions can find their way home." A splash and laughter drew my attention outside. Reid had slipped into one of the tanks, completely soaked, but grinning as he helped a young student net her first fingerling trout. Hank stood nearby, shaking his head but smiling. "Chase called yesterday," I told Mom. "Asked about investing in the educational program we're starting. And I told him he could apply for a teaching position, just like anyone else." I folded the letter carefully. No shortcuts this time. Mom squeezed my shoulder, then headed out to join the tour group. I opened Dad's journal one last time, but instead of reading, I started writing. "Dear Dad, I finally understand what you protected all these years. Not just water or land or fish, but the chance for people to change. Reid's not the man I married, he's becoming someone better. I'm not the daughter you left behind. I'm becoming someone stronger. The farm isn't just your legacy anymore. It's turning into something new, something that belongs to all of us who choose to stay and work for it. Through the window, I watched Reid pointing out the underground spring's bubbling surface to the amazed students. The same spring Chase had tried to exploit now helped us teach future generations about conservation and second chances. Some might call it naive, giving people another chance. But as I locked Dad's journal away, I realized that true strength isn't in holding on to anger or seeking revenge. It's in knowing when to let the current carry you towards something better, even if the path isn't what you expected.